Där har du paus. Paussymbolen.
So we don't seem to have a Wi-Fi, but it's not a problem. I have broadband in my tablet. Aphantasia, when you are blind in your mind. And this is a new discovery, and I think this goes to show we don't know these things. Aphantasia is the phenomenon in which people are unable to visualize imagery. While most people are able to conjure an image of a scene or a face in their minds, people with aphantasia cannot. Imagine that it is a warm summer's day and you are sitting on the side of a swimming pool. The sun is shining down and there are children laughing and splashing in the water. What sort of images do you see in your mind as you think about this scene? If you are like the estimated 1 to 3% of the population with aphantasia, you may be unable to visualize any type of image in your head. These individuals have no mind's eye, or their imagination is essentially blind. This ability to visualize events and images play an important part in people's lives. People often visualize scenes, people, experiences, imaginings, objects, and planned events, among other things. When you think about the friend, for example, you might immediately visualize the face inside your mind. People with aphantasia are unable to visualize such mental image. If you were to ask a person with aphantasia to imagine something, they could likely describe the object, explain the concept, and rattle off facts that they know about the object. But they would not be able to experience any sort of mental image to accompany this knowledge. Sons of aphantasia. Do you think you might have aphantasia? Consider the following questions. Think of a friend or a family member. Try to conjure the image of their face in your mind. How clearly can you see their features, face, hair and shape? 2. How clearly can you picture their characteristics, movements and gestures, tone of voice, intonation, prosody? 3, and this could be the demanding thing, how vividly can you picture that person's clothing? What do you think, Henry? Can you see your mother, your daughter?
Yes.
I cannot. I don't see anything. And I think there is a connection, because I used to be able that before the accident. I could see loads of things. And it's a connection here with what I mentioned earlier about visual effects on the muscular system, because it is sort of odd. The left hemisphere's way of planning seems to be disregarding all of reality. In that planning, it's just abstractions or representations that are being compared. Imagining you are probably like Jan now, sitting in an airport, planning how to get to the gate. If you're in the left hemisphere, you will compare different possible events, pros and cons, P's and C's, as we used to say in English class. And that doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. There are many reasons for that, because it takes away reality. You are no longer situated in space. This is a sort of a facsimile. Facsimile means that you take something from reality, change it completely, and then you say you're going to use that. Usually facsimiles are used in newspapers to make a sort of an illustration without showing what it is. A facsimile in a newspaper could be a picture of the law book, new law established. The picture of the law book is a facsimile. You can show some of it text in the law book, but you can't read the text. Most likely you can't read because it's cut in such a way. It is supposed to be a representation because you don't have a good photo as a journalist. You didn't bother to go out and take a photo of the lawgiver or something similar. Then you use a facsimile. This way of thinking in the airport is like using facsimiles. And those facsimiles won't lead you effectively to go to the gate, because you need all of reality to go to the gate. Otherwise you'll be hindered. So you see here, in some ways planning is just not possible in the left hemisphere. And that of course leads to disadvantageous decisions. It leads to failure in doing things. It leads to inability to cope with the situation. All those things that we need to be safe, both for ourselves, for our friends and family, all that disappears if you go into the facsimile mode. Nothing is available there of reality. And this is what the authors of this article is pointing to. Once you get the whole reality into the picture, then you can do planning. That is proper planning, and that is a planning that takes reality into consideration. So that is quite different from the mode of the left hemisphere, and often we can also liken, not correctly, but we can liken the left hemisphere in a politician who use words, concepts without intending anything. Just speaking fancy, trying to sound effective, having knowingness. This is what the left hemisphere produces, facsimiles of reality. Those things are no good to construct a plan, to do projection. Neither can you reach into your own memory. Modern people don't have a firm localization in the past, what we previously called retention. Their mood does not allow proper retention. Instead, what happens is confabulation comes into the action. Confabulation is the left hemisphere constructing its own figments of imagination or fantasy. So I think the Benjamin Libet experiment shows what is confabulation in this regard. We are in front of a situation where we can make a choice. Since we don't have access to the visual imagery that was pointed to in the article, we cannot make a decision, so we let chance rule, and after the decision is taken, the left hemisphere explains how it made that decision, and that is called confabulation. Confabulation is very prevalent among patients who are suffering from different severe disorders. Their whole reality becomes a confabulation, and it later goes over even in hallucinations. Hallucinations are not, oddly enough, just pictures. They usually can't picture well. Schizophrenics can't really imagine well. Rather, they are representations, whatever they are, facsimiles of reality. They literally don't have access to reality. In such a confounded way, they have no idea that the little substance that there are in their thinking, in their body system, will not lead them to any good decisions or even knowing where in the world they are. They will be out of the world. They will have an out of worldly experience, so to speak. It is very interesting, as I say in this article. I will mention a few points. Key points from the article: coupling mental imagery with physical training is the best suited intervention for improving strength performance. An examination of potential moderator variables reveal that the effectiveness of mental imagery on strength performance may vary depending on the appropriate matching of muscular groups, the characteristics of mental imagery interventions, training duration, and type of skills. The third, self-efficacy, motivation, and imagery ability were the mediator variables in the mental imagery strength performance relationship. Greater effects of internal imagery perspectives on strength performance than those of external imagery could be explained in terms of neural adaptations, stronger brain activation, higher muscle excitation, greater somatic and sensomotor activation, and higher physiological responses such as blood pressure, heart rate, and respiration rate. Do you hear that, Henry? Mental imagery prevention interventions may provide a valuable tool to improve the functional recovery after short-term muscle immobilization and anterior cruciate ligaments in patients. This is one of the reasons when I visited schools in Japan and China, students were always sitting on their sitting bones or possibly sitting on the floor, very equalized in their position. This is an absolute necessity to go into the right brain. It will not happen if you're unbalanced. There's zero chance. The evidence coming from science are really clearly there can be no perception, no thinking, no pretension that is planning, neither can there be intention, neither can there be firm imagery. So you see here, it's very hard to see what is the hen and the egg. Well, see them as complementary. They come into action together. Diminishing one part of this will diminishing two parts at the same time. It will lead to frequent misuse of the body as well. And the more you go into this slack slouch mood, the less you will be able to enter into the right hemisphere mood. And of course, as the muscles grew more and more tired, they developed the tendency to produce lactic acid, which is tiredness, this Fe tiredness I mentioned in the beginning, almost like pain. And that is the spiraling down. For every time you over-relax, the body will have the signal, produce more T2 and T2 muscles, limit perception, limit thinking to an absolute minimum. And that is spiraling down. And I think the first 4 or 5 leaps, you're still within the range of being normal. And then you have, maybe by the 5th, the 6th pinch, you go into what is called pre-dementia and different severe disorders like neurosis, bipolar, and so forth. The system doesn't work, and that imbalance, producing less of good results, is telling the body to do the wrong thing, telling the body to collapse. The collapse in itself, you see, this never happened in the inner kingdom, because once you get attacked as an antelope by a lion, for instance, you are either after 10 minutes eaten, you are the food of the lion, or you are safe. There are no in between. And what happens to the antelope is within a day it goes back to its normal mood. And possibly because it relies on instinct. It doesn't rely on thinking. So it will do the very same instinctual thing during the day. That will help the body to relax. But that is a whole different concept, a whole different ship when it comes to human beings. Because in the case of human beings, our thinking gets affected too, and we need that thinking to make firm decisions. And after the shock, our thinking goes down, we'll be thinking with the left hemisphere, our understanding will be limited. So visual imagery and the use of the body well in a balanced situation. Without an exception, I never ever saw any Japanese school children sitting other than on the sitting bone. This is an absolute prerequisite to stay in the good mood, in the right hemisphere, understanding, learning, educational mood, and thereby they will also be able to plan, be able to think with the whole world and not just those facsimiles or representation. I have a great problem with representation. I don't think that is an appropriate word because it leads the mind into the wrong things. Facsimile could be a replacement. I don't know what you think, but it doesn't really serve the purpose. So there's an interesting connection indicated here. Our muscular strength and how imagery always affect the muscular uptake, the make of the muscles, the balance, how strong we are, and of course, especially in athletic sports, it is always the case they don't care about the dogmas, they don't care about the ideas that our bodies know what to do themselves. So this is a much better lying position. You should not have your hand behind the neck, because a relaxed position, you do not overstretch your hand or anything like that. Those are things that will help ease the passage into T1 mode and N1 mode. Simplify the whole thing. So we have a very interesting connection. My proposal is that thinking and body balancing are very similar, and in certain moods of body balance we just can't think. There's no possibility of any thinking going on whatsoever. And this diminishing of thinking could be one of the most gravest things. It's absolutely predominantly in the West. This is the only place that we enlarge, slouch, collapse into sofas. We don't, so this is torturous for most Asian people, not having the sitting bones connected to the body. And it is torture. It's proved it is torture for the body. But once you get used to it, you don't see that any longer as torture. And I would say, especially since the left hemisphere is the one who's deciding. He is saying, or she is saying, whatever the left hemisphere is, saying, this is okay, I want this. And therein lies the problem, because the left hemisphere have no idea what the body feels. It doesn't know thinking, and it always, listen to my lips, it always comes after the fact. And confibulate. And confibulate is lying, making up. So you cannot trust your own hemisphere. You need to follow certain rules until that day that you firmly establish T1 and N1. Then you can trust your thinking. But if you're trusting your thinking before, or even calling it thinking, which is not, that is incredibly dangerous. and that will take you down the loop. And once you establish that route, you think you can think, which I think is maybe the worst misconception, that will also be the path into the event horizon. Well, I do also recommend the movie where Sam Harris is playing the lead character in Event Horizon. And I think he went down in that movie down the loop because he turned into the devil, which is very fitting. Okay, I say thank you very much and have a very pleasant afternoon. See you soon again. Bye-bye. And with this facsimile of Andy Warhol, having no likeness to Marilyn Monroe. This is the thinking of the left hemisphere. This is what meanings are. And this is what gets established in the metaphysics of presence as well.